My father stood up at my wedding, raised his champagne glass, and erased me from his life in front of 300 people. What he didn't know was that the man he called trash was about to destroy everything he'd ever built. People think having a billionaire dad means a perfect life, private jets, penthouse views, doors opening without knocking. Let me tell you the truth. It feels like living in a golden cage with a man who thinks money makes him God. My name is Fiona, I'm 28 years old, and until 6 months ago, my father owned my future. Richard Ashford, real estate king of New York City, the kind of man who could sneeze and change property values. Half of Manhattan bowed when he walked in. Politicians took his calls. Bankers laughed at his jokes even when they weren't funny. And me? I wasn't his daughter. I was his investment. From the moment I could walk, my life was already mapped out. Which private schools I'd attend, which friends were acceptable, which career was strategic, and eventually which man I'd marry. When I was 16, he told me something I'll never forget. Love is for poor people, Fiona. In this family, we marry for leverage. I believed him for a long time, too long, until 6 months before my wedding, when I broke the one rule he never forgave. I fell in love, not with a banker, not with a politician's son, not with the heir to some legacy trust. I fell in love with a mechanic from Queens. Grays on his hands, caluses on his fingers, a smile that felt real, and that choice cost me everything. 8 months earlier, I was sitting in my father's Upper East Side penthouse. The kind that looks down on Central Park like it owns it. Because in his mind it did. Italian marble floors. A dining table imported from Milan that could seat 12. Wine bottles worth more than most people's rent. My father sat at the head of the table, not looking at me. I set up a meeting for you Saturday, he said casually. Harrison Wells III. His family and I are finalizing a merger. I put my fork down. I can't make Saturday. He looked up slowly. That alone was dangerous. I'm seeing someone, I said. I want you to meet him. Silence slammed into the room. Ooh, he asked. His name is James. My father laughed once. Sharp. Cold. James who? You don't know him. That's when his jaw tightened. You've been seeing someone for 6 months. Without my approval. I don't need your permission to date, I said, my heart pounding. He leaned back in his chair like a judge ready to pass sentence. In this family, he said, marriage is strategy. Who is this man who thinks he can touch my daughter without going through me? That night, I didn't tell him James was a mechanic. I didn't have to. He already decided James was nothing. I met James on a day I was never supposed to have free. I'd escaped one of my father's board meetings after he tore apart my marketing proposal in front of executives. Acceptable, he'd said, the word that haunted my life. I wandered into a small Brooklyn coffee shop, mismatched chairs, chalkboard menu, no one who knew my last name. That's where James sat down across from me and said, rough day. He was tall. Warm eyes. Flannel shirt with oil stains. Real. We talked for 3 hours. He asked about me. Not my family. Not my money. Not my connections. I don't care what your last name is, he said as we walked to the subway. I just want to know what makes you laugh. No one had ever said that to me before. 3 days after I told my father about James, he summoned me to his office. There was a folder on his desk, my life, printed and dissected. James Carter, he read, mechanic. Owns a small garage, apartment in Queens. No assets, no influence. He closed the folder. This is who you chose. He's a good man? I said. Good men don't build empires? My father snapped. They get crushed by them. He slid the folder toward me. End this. Now. I stood up, left the folder untouched, and walked out. That was the moment my father decided to punish me. The first strike came at a bridal shop. My card declined. Then my backup. Then the emergency one my mother gave me. The bank told me the truth quietly. All accounts were deactivated yesterday by the primary account holder, my father. I sat on the fitting room floor in a wedding dress I couldn't afford, realizing I'd just been cut off from the only life I'd ever known. James showed up an hour later, without questions, without judgment. He pulled out a stack of cash, too much cash, and said, "Let me help." I said no. But for the first time, I realized something terrifying. Without my father's money, I didn't know who I was. And that was just the beginning. I thought losing money was the worst thing my father could do to me. I was wrong. Because the real humiliation was coming. And he planned it for my wedding day. I thought the worst thing my father could do was cut me off financially. I had no idea he was about to destroy me in front of everyone who ever mattered. The days leading up to the wedding felt like walking through a minefield. Quiet, tense, and one wrong step away from disaster. Friends stopped answering my calls. People I'd grown up with suddenly had family concerns or business reasons to stay distant. Translation. My father had made it clear: stand with me or lose him. At work, things got colder. Emails stopped including my name. Meetings happened without me. Then HR sent the message I'd been dreading: your role is under review. Please refrain from client-facing activities until further notice. They didn't fire me. They erased me. But through all of it, James stayed steady. No lectures. No pity. No, I told you so. Just quiet strength. A week before the wedding, my father showed up at our Brooklyn apartment. No warning, no apology. Tom Ford suit, polished shoes. Standing in our doorway like dirt might rub off on him. I'm here to make you an offer, he said. He pulled out his checkbook. $5 million. Cancel the wedding. Come home. My hands shook. No? His pen hovered. 10 million. Final offer. I'm not for sale. That's when his face changed. When this marriage fails, he hissed, don't come crawling back. You'll have nothing. No name, no inheritance, no protection. He pointed at James. You'll be nobody. Just like him. James finally spoke. Mr. Ashford. He said calmly. You should leave. My father laughed, but something flickered behind his eyes. Uncertainty. Our wedding was supposed to be small, 50 guests, a Brooklyn restaurant, friends who stayed when things got ugly. Instead, we walked in and froze. 300 people filled the room, designer gowns, custom suits, society reporters pretending not to film. And at the center of it all, my father. Smiling, holding champagne, like he owned the moment. Surprise. Sweetheart, he said, kissing my cheek. I promised you a wedding you'd never forget. That's when I understood. He wasn't here to celebrate, he was here to humiliate me. The ceremony happened anyway. James' vows were simple, honest. Mine shook, but I meant every word. For one brief moment, none of it mattered. Then came the clinking of glass. Richard Ashford stood. The room fell silent. A toast, he announced. To my daughter and her husband. The word husband dripped with contempt. I built everything I have from nothing, he said, pacing, and I hoped my daughter would marry someone worthy of that legacy. He looked at James. Instead, she chose a grease monkey from Queens. Gasps. Phones rising. Whispers. So let this be a lesson. My father continued. From this moment on, Fiona Ashford is no longer my daughter. My chest collapsed. She is removed from my will. Cut off from every trust, every share, every benefit. He raised his glass. When you choose poverty over family, you get exactly what you deserve. He smiled at me. Congratulations. You're finally free. Silence crushed the room. James stood, slow, calm, controlled. Thank you for coming, Mr. Ashford, he said. And thank you for your blessing. My father laughed. You have nothing. James stepped closer. We don't need your money. What do you have then? My father sneered. James smiled. I have her. Something in my father's face faltered, just for a second. Then I stood. My legs shook but my voice didn't. My father believes love is a transaction, I said. That people are only worth what they can offer him. I looked at the room. I spent 28 years trying to earn his approval. Today, I stopped. I took James' hand. If that cost me everything I was supposed to inherit, then it was never mine. I turned to the guests. If you came for a tragedy, you can leave. If you came to celebrate love, stay. About 30 people walked out. The rest stayed. My father hadn't expected that. The music started again. The air changed. We laughed, danced, cut the cake. And for the first time in my life I felt free. But something was off. James was too calm. Too unbothered. Later that night, I caught him on the phone. Whispering about board meetings. Mechanics don't have board meetings. And there was that older man from the wedding. who shook James' hand like he knew him. I didn't know it yet, but my father had just made the biggest mistake of his life. 6 weeks later, my life hit rock bottom. No job, no money, no family. And that's when my husband's secret started to crack. 3 months after my wedding, I was crying on a tiny Brooklyn balcony, convinced my father had been right. Inside the apartment, my husband was having secret phone calls that didn't belong to a broke mechanic. The honeymoon glow didn't fade. Life did. Reality came fast and brutal. I applied for 43 jobs: marketing assistant, brand strategist, entry level, mid-level. I didn't care anymore. Every response was the same: "We've decided to move forward with other candidates." Some didn't even pretend to consider me. Manhattan had closed its doors. The Ashford name, once a golden key, had become a warning label. No one wanted to anger my father by hiring his disowned daughter. "Maybe I should look outside the city," I said one night, staring at my laptop. James stood by the window, quiet. "Or maybe you shouldn't work for anyone else." I laughed bitterly. "With what money?" "I have $3,000 to my name." He didn't laugh back. "Sometimes that's enough." That was the first time I noticed it. That calm confidence. Like he knew something I didn't. Money got tight. I insisted on paying half the rent, half the groceries, half of everything. James never argued, but I noticed things. He always had cash, not 20s, hundreds, thick stacks folded into a worn leather wallet. And then there were the phone calls. Late, quiet, technical. The projections need adjustment before the board meeting. What board meeting? One night, I woke up at 2:13 a.m. James wasn't in bed. I found him in the living room, phone pressed to his ear. "No, don't push it to Williams. I'll handle the review myself." He turned when he saw me. "I'll call you back." "Work stuff," he said. "Go back to sleep." I nodded. "But mechanics don't talk about projections." 3 months after the wedding, my mother called. Her voice was sweet. "Careful. Your father hasn't changed the will yet," she said. "There's still time." "Time to do what?" "To leave my husband." "I'm happy, Mom," I said. She sighed. "He can't give you the life you deserve." I thought about James making me coffee every morning. He already has. Then the letter arrived. Heavy paper, legal language. I was officially erased. $200 million. Gone. I sat on the balcony as the sun went down, shaking. James found me hours later. "I don't care about the money," I said. "I know," he replied softly. That's when he took my hand. "I need to tell you something," he said. "But not yet." I stared at him. "In 3 months, there's an event," he continued. "Everything will change." "James, what are you hiding?" He met my eyes. "Trust me." And somehow I did. The next day, I finally returned a call I'd been ignoring. Margaret Smith, my grandmother's lawyer. She slid a folder across the desk. "Your grandmother anticipated this." Inside, a $500,000 trust, independent of my father. Activated only if I married for love. I cried for 20 minutes. For the first time, hope felt real. I started my own firm, Thornton Creative. Small clients, real people. Work spread fast. I was finally building something that was mine. Then I got an email that made my hands shake. Nexus AI Technologies, a massive tech company. They wanted to meet me. Strange, even stranger. My father was desperately chasing a deal with the same company, and James was smiling. One night, he sat me down. "I need to tell you something." My stomach dropped. "The garage is real," he said, "but it's not my main job." I froze. "I work in tech, Fiona. I'm deeply involved." "How involved?" He hesitated. "Come to the gala with me. Then you'll understand." He handed me an invitation. "Guest of honor James Carter." I whispered. "Who are you?" He cupped my face. "I'm the man who loves you." The next night, I walked into the Met Museum and watched my poor mechanic husband walk onto a billionaire's stage. The room went silent when they announced the CEO's name. My father lifted his champagne glass and froze. Because the man walking onto that stage was the same. Grease monkey. He disowned me for marrying. The Metropolitan Museum of Art didn't even look real that night. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen stars. 500 of the most powerful people in America filled the room. Tech giants, senators, hedge fund kings, media sharks. Everyone wore confidence like armor, and everyone was waiting for one man. James moved through the crowd like he belonged there. Not flashy, not loud, just calm. People stopped him, shook his hand, spoke to him with respect. That alone should have told me everything. Then I saw my father. Richard Ashford stood near the sponsor tables with my mother and Derek, scanning the room like a hunter looking for prey. He wanted this deal. The Nexus AI data center was worth $50 million, and more importantly, prestige. This deal would cement his legacy. He had no idea he was already too late. The lights dimmed. A hush swept across the hall. For the first time ever, the host announced, "The founder and CEO of Nexus AI Technologies will address the public." Murmurs exploded. My father leaned forward, eyes sharp. James squeezed my hand. "Ready?" he asked. "For what?" I whispered. He smiled, not his small private smile, but something freer. To watch everything change. He let go of my hand and walked toward the stage. "Please welcome," the host said, voice echoing, "James Carter, founder and CEO of Nexus AI." The applause hit like thunder. My father's glass stopped mid-air. My mother's mouth fell open. Derek blinked like his brain short-circuited. And my husband, the man my father called trash, stood beneath a screen flashing, "James Carter CEO Neniexos I Tino guys." I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I just watched my father's world collapse in real time. James spoke for 20 minutes. About innovation, responsibility, the future. He was brilliant, confident, magnetic. The room hung on every word. I barely heard a thing. I was watching my father, Richard Ashford, the man who never lost control. Looked like he'd been punched in the chest. For the first time in my life, he had no power. The standing ovation lasted forever. James stepped off the stage and walked straight toward my father. I followed. "Mr. Ashford," James said calmly, "I believe you wanted to discuss a partnership." My father stood too fast. "You?" His voice cracked. "You're the CEO?" James handed him a business card. "Simple. Undeniable. My wife speaks highly of you," James added politely. Around us, people were watching, listening, recording. My father's survival instincts kicked in. His shock turned into a salesman's smile. "James," he said warmly, extending his hand. "I always knew Fiona had excellent taste." The lie burned. James didn't take his hand. "You called me a parasite," James said evenly. "You humiliated your daughter publicly." The smile on my father's face twitched. "That was before I knew." "Before you knew my net worth," James interrupted. Silence. "Nothing about me changed," James continued. "Only your respect." My father swallowed. "Let's discuss business," he said quickly. "The data center." "I've already decided," James replied. People leaned in. "Nexus AI will not partner with Ashford Properties." My father's face went gray. "Why?" he whispered. James slipped his arm around my waist. "Because I don't do business with men who treat their families like assets." The crowd murmured. Phones rose. My father opened his mouth. Nothing came out. By morning, the story was everywhere. Billionaire CEO humiliated by his own son-in-law. Wedding insult resurfaces after shocking reveal. Ashford Properties loses $50 deal. My father became a punchline. The internet was ruthless. But karma wasn't done yet. 3 days later, Derek showed up at our apartment. No confidence. No jokes. Just desperation. "I wanted to apologize," he said. James looked at him calmly. "You want access," he corrected. Derek's face tightened. "We could do great things together." James opened the door. "We're not family." And closed it. My mother called next. Crying. "I always supported you," she claimed. I told her about the email she sent before my wedding, helping plan my punishment. She went silent. "I'm done," I said. "Don't call me again." And for the first time, I meant it. My father lost his biggest deal. My brother lost his pride. My mother lost her access. But the hardest moment was still coming. Because the man who destroyed my life was about to stand at my door with nothing left. The man who once owned half of Manhattan stood in my doorway alone. No driver, no entourage, no power. Just regret and nowhere else to go. I didn't recognize him at first. Not really. Richard Ashford had always looked untouchable. Tailored suits, perfect posture, eyes that judged before listening. Now, wrinkled coat. Gray in his hair he never used to show, and something I'd never seen before. Fear. May I come in? He asked quietly. I stepped aside. James stayed back, watching, letting this be my moment. My father looked around our small apartment. The second-hand couch, the mismatched kitchen chairs, the wedding photos taped to the wall. He didn't sneer. He didn't criticize. I've lost 3 partnerships, he said. The board is discussing removing me as CEO. I felt nothing, no joy, no revenge, just clarity. I was wrong, he said finally. About James. About you. About everything. I waited my whole life to hear that. And when it came, it felt late. I don't need your apology, I said. I need you to understand something. I looked him dead in the eye. I was happy before I knew James was rich. I didn't marry him for money. I chose him because he respected me. My father swallowed. I don't know how to be that kind of father. Then learn, I replied. That was the boundary. Not forgiveness. But a start. Life moved on. Thornton Creative grew fast. 15 employees within a year. A Fortune 500 client, earned, not gifted. James still worked at the garage on weekends. Money doesn't define me, he said. Neither does tech. I believed him. Christmas came quietly. No penthouse. No designer chaos. Just warmth, family, peace. And for the first time, I didn't miss what I lost. But just when I thought the story was over, one last truth changed everything I thought I knew about power. Everyone thought the story ended when my husband was revealed as a billionaire. They were wrong. That was just the plot twist, not the lesson. After the gala, people treated me differently. Not better, not worse, just differently. Old friends suddenly remembered my number. Executives who ignored my emails wanted coffee. Strangers smiled too wide, listened too closely. And every single one of them thought they knew the story. Poor girl marries rich man. Karma wins. They didn't understand a damn thing. One afternoon, I asked James something that had been eating at me. Why didn't you tell me sooner? We were sitting on the fire escape, coffee in hand, city humming below. He didn't dodge it. Because I needed to know, he said. That you loved me when there was nothing to gain. I swallowed. My father taught me that love is transactional. I wanted to be wrong. You were. I said softly. He smiled. That's why you're different from him. Meanwhile, my father was spiraling. Ashford Properties stock dipped. Board members whispered. Invitations stopped coming. For the first time in his life, doors didn't open, and he didn't know how to exist without them. He called me one night. Not to ask for help. To talk. I don't understand how I lost, he said. I didn't sugarcoat it. You didn't lose because James was richer, I said. You lost because you thought money was power. Silence. Power, I continued, is influence, trust, loyalty. And you traded all of that for control. That conversation broke something in him. Or maybe, built something new. Weeks passed. My brother stayed quiet. And honestly, I felt lighter, not angry, just free. One night, James showed me something unexpected. A framed photo. Him, younger, covered in grease, standing inside a tiny garage. I built Nexus AI from a basement, he said. But I kept the garage to remember who I was. That's when I understood. He never hid his wealth out of fear. He hid it out of principle. 3 months later, Ashford Properties announced a leadership change. Richard Ashford stepped down. Voluntarily. The man who once controlled everything, finally let go. He showed up again. Not to beg. To thank me. You taught me something I never learned, he said. That respect can't be bought. I nodded. That's the first honest thing you've ever said. I thought that was closure. I was wrong. Because the final test wasn't about money, power, or revenge. It was about forgiveness and whether some bridges should ever be rebuilt. Everyone told me forgiveness would set me free. What they didn't tell me is that forgiveness doesn't mean letting people back into your life. A year ago, I would have begged for this moment. My father sitting across from me at a small cafe in Brooklyn. No assistants. No power plays. Just a man and his daughter. Now, I wasn't sure what I felt. He stirred his coffee slowly, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing. I've been in therapy, he said. That alone would have sounded impossible a year ago. I'm trying to understand why I needed control so badly. I nodded, listening, but guarded. Words were cheap in my family. Actions were rare. You know. He continued. When you were a child, I promised myself you'd never struggle the way I did. There it is, I said quietly. He looked up. You didn't protect me from struggle, I continued. You protected yourself from fear. The truth landed hard. He didn't argue. That's how I knew he was finally listening. Later that night, I asked James the question I'd been avoiding. Do you think people really change? He didn't answer right away. I think some people learn, he said, and some people just adjust their behavior to survive. That stuck with me. A week later, my mother called. Not crying. Not manipulating. Just quiet. I miss you, she said. I believed her. But missing someone doesn't undo betrayal. I need time, I replied. She understood. Or at least, she didn't fight me. That was new. The real test came unexpectedly. A charity event, small, local, nothing flashy. Thornton Creative was sponsoring it. James and I showed up early to help set up chairs. Halfway through the night I saw him, my father, standing awkwardly near the back. Not announced. Not invited by force. He came because he wanted to support me. Not his image. Me. He didn't speak. Didn't interrupt. Just watched. At the end, he clapped quietly like everyone else. When our eyes met, he nodded. No pride. No ownership, just acknowledgement. Something inside me loosened. On the way home, James squeezed my hand. You don't owe him anything, he said. I know, I replied. But I don't owe myself bitterness either. That's when I finally understood forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't reconciliation. It isn't forgetting. It isn't pretending the past didn't happen. Forgiveness is choosing not to carry someone else's poison inside you. A few weeks later, I set boundaries. Clear ones. I'd see my father, occasionally. On my terms. No business. No money, no control. He not eagerly, but sincerely. Derek tried once more. A text. Can we talk? I didn't respond. Some bridges burn for a reason. Thornton Creative hit another milestone. We expanded into a second office. Not because of James, not because of connections, because of work. That mattered to me more than any apology. One night, lying in bed, I asked James something else. If I'd never known who you were, would you still be happy? He smiled. I am happy, he said. I married a woman who chose me when she thought I had nothing. I rested my head on his chest. And for the first time, I felt something I'd never had growing up. Safety, not financial, emotional, real. People love dramatic endings, explosions, revenge, public apologies. But real life, real healing? It's quiet, it's boring, and it's powerful. There was only one thing left to decide. Not about my father. Not about my family. About who I wanted to be going forward, and that choice would define everything. I lost a penthouse. I lost a 200 million inheritance. And somehow I ended up richer than everyone who tried to break me. A year after my wedding, I stood in our office, my office, watching my team argue over campaign ideas. 15 employees, 2 locations, clients we earned, not inherited. Thornton Creative was real. Not because of my last name. Not because of my husband's money. Because I built it. One decision at a time. James still fixed cars on weekends. People didn't understand that. Why would a billionaire CEO crawl under a car? Because power doesn't come from pretending you're better than others, it comes from knowing exactly who you are. My father and I now meet for coffee once a month. No deals, no advice, no expectations, just conversation. Sometimes it's awkward, sometimes it's honest, and sometimes it's enough. He's learning. So am I. My mother keeps her distance. Not out of anger, out of respect. And that's okay. People still ask me the same question. Do you regret choosing love over money? I always smile. Because they don't understand the question is wrong. I didn't choose love over money. I chose love without money. And that made all the difference. Here's what my story really taught me. 1. Never confuse wealth with worth. Money reveals character, it doesn't create it. 2. Watch how people treat you when they think you have nothing. That's who they really are. 3. Love isn't proven by what someone gives you, but by what they don't take from you. My father took control. My husband gave freedom. And that's why I chose right. If you stayed until the end, thank you. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been controlled by money, family, or fear, If you've ever chosen yourself when it cost you everything, this story is for you. Drop a comment if it resonated, like if you believe respect matters more than money. Subscribe if you want more stories that don't end the way you expect. Because sometimes, the biggest flex isn't how much you have, it's how little you need to be happy.